Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to LP's Open Mic Night, where I just sit here, just freestyle thoughts about the Cowboys leading up to this point. We're now in week 2 of training camp, so it's a lot to be seen. A lot of breaking news, actually, as a matter of fact. But before I get started talking about my initial thoughts on week 2 of camp, so far what's going on, I want to ask that you guys like this style of content of me just talking into the camera, freestyle on top of the head, just giving you my raw take and raw thoughts on the Cowboys. Please hit that like, hit that sub button. Trying to grow the channel up to about 500 subs by week 1 of the season. So hitting the sub button would be a big help to do that. So hit that sub button, hit that like button, and share with other Cowboys fans and creators. But getting back to it. So a lot going on in camp. As I normally do on the channel, I talk about the offense first and work my way back to the defense. So if you guys have been following along with camp and some of the news and notes, the one thing that I wanted to open the show with tonight was talking about Dak Prescott and the growing connection he seems to have with CeeDee Lamb. For Dak, it's now year 7, so we do want to see Dak take those strides and, if anything, have a higher plateau. And what I mean by that is Dak is a quarterback. We've seen the peaks, we've seen the valleys, and we've seen what Dak looks like when he's on top of his game. So for me personally, I want to see Dak be more consistent in that peak. So like I said, make that peak a plateau to where his basement or his flat level is high level. And from what it looks like through camp, he seems to understand a lot more what his receivers like to do. You're watching these clips online provided by many Cowboys writers, content creators, reporters. You're seeing Dak hitting these receivers in stride, hitting them coming out of their breaks. An example of that would be CeeDee Lamb. All the reports from camp in regards to CeeDee Lamb is that he's the real deal. He's showing out. He's stepping up into that role as a number 1 guy, and that's all you can ask for when you take a guy like CeeDee Lamb in the first round of the draft. So it's really encouraging to see that. And the one thing I'll say is that maybe because Lamb is the pseudo number 1, maybe because Lamb is basically their last top-tier option to turn to right now with the absence of Gallup, it might actually force Kellen Moore to depend on his playmakers even more. So forget spreading the ball around, forget trying to just have a whatever they give you approach, but put the ball in the playmaker's hands. And I think that's what you're going to see this year, if anything, with CeeDee Lamb. And I like to see the connection with him and Dak proceeding and progressing is exactly what we're asking for. So that's vitally important. So that's one thing I've noticed so far. Now, talking about the receivers, I want to address the injury to James Washington. If those, for those of you that saw it, he went up for a pass, a deep throw from Dak Prescott, and it looked like that Trayvon Diggs had fell on his foot. Washington was carted off the field, and Washington seems like a guy that the team was counting on and banking on as a veteran option, if not just a bridge until Gallup came back, because similar to Gallup, he's a deep ball threat. Whether you like his speed or not, the guy can get downfield and make plays down the field. But with him out, the Cowboys now have questions to answer. Well, actually, the Cowboys, more so like the ownership of Jerry Jones, who was asked, hey, with this guy being hurt, do you guys expect to get more outside help? And Cowboys fans, you know the names. You know who they're asking for. They're asking about Will Fuller. They're asking about, to me, doesn't make much sense, but Odell Beckham. They're asking about a lot of guys for external help to try to bolster the receiving core for right now in the absence of Michael Gallup or James Washington. Once again, holding true to form, the Cowboys, quote unquote, like their guys, which means they're not going to bring anybody from the outside. They're going to stay with what they have. For me, I kind of like a guy like Simi Fehoko, still coming along, still growing in the way he's being used, inside, outside, big body threat, has some speed. But kind of a newcomer is Dennis Houston, who I'll admit I know very little about, but he's getting a lot of play, a lot of burn, a lot of opportunity, and he's been playing the X receiver for a lot. And there seems to be a lot of talk about him as an undrafted guy coming right in and playing a lot of snaps. But also that allows CeeDee Lamb to move around the formation as well, not being only an outside guy, but an inside guy. So there's something to be said about what this means for a guy like Dennis Houston. And with a game coming up in less than 2 weeks, we'll see. We'll see what that means. But speaking of also receivers, in the last week, actually, talking about a newcomer as well is Turpin. Turpin, who was the USFL MVP, a guy that has a lot of speed to his game, a guy who's not similar to the guys on the roster. Currently, the Cowboys receivers are bigger, taller receivers. This guy comes in about 5'6", kind of a slight build, actually a very slight build. And what you've seen so far is how he's going to be used, mainly on special teams as a returner, maybe a punt returner, kick returner. In the offensive sets, more than likely jet sweeps and motion. And I see with him, it seems like his role might be something like Lucky Whitehead to start off, of a guy that's, like I said, a misdirection guy, jets, sweeps, motion, getting that speed on the field to kind of steal a possession or steal it down from the defense. So we'll see what happens with that. And then as far as tight end goes, there's been a lot of talk about the tight end spot and trying to be more athletic at tight end, to be more vertical at tight end. And so another guy that's kind of been flashing and showing off a little bit is Indiana tight end Peyton Hendershot, who's again kind of in that mold of a taller, lengthier tight end that can get down the field, got some athletic ability, some fluidity to his game. So there's one guy to look for in these games, especially going into the preseason, of getting extended looks, extended reps. And also, of course, Dalton Schultz. And I've been wrong about him as far as his production goes. He's a guy who's playing under a contract year in the franchise tag, and he's showing out in camp. He's getting open. He's doing what he does. He gets open. He makes catches. So he's playing like he wants that bag at the end of the season. And, I'll go back and forth on the evaluation of Dalton Schultz, whether or not it's worth to pay him a lot of money or not, but he's doing his part. So that's one thing I've noticed. And then also with the Cowboys offensive line, if you guys have been watching, another story is the offensive tackle, Walesko, seems to be hurt. And with surgery, as they've been saying, it's not a matter of if, it's when. So more than likely he'll be out for surgery with a shoulder subluxation. So that means Josh Ball, second-year tackle Josh Ball from Marshall, looks to be locked in at the swing tackle, which may or may not be a good thing with limited experience. Didn't play much last year. So now he's pressed into action if something were to happen to a guy like, let's say, Tyron Smith, who we know isn't always healthy, isn't always able to play a full slate of games. So it could be seen what happens with Josh Ball. So whether you like it or not, to me, it looks like you're going to see a lot of Josh Ball in preseason. And for all we know, maybe during the regular season. So we're going to have to see what he's got right away. Also, I want to talk about the linebackers too. With Jerry Jones kind of admitting that first-year linebacker Damone Clark may be back sooner than expected. And when Jones was talking about him, Damone Clark, the late-round linebacker from LSU, that fans are really happy to see Dallas take and excited about Dallas taking him late in the draft. Jones seemed very confident that he's going to be back sooner than later. And that's something to watch too, something to take note of, because at their core, linebacker is thin. It's very thin. And it has been based on last year. It has been also based on your linebacker in certain packages is Jaron Kearse at safety coming down in the box, who, by the way, also limped off at camp, came back into practice, but that's a guy you cannot have go down under any circumstance. So they're very thin at linebacker, which raises some questions, raises some concerns about linebacker. But the one guy that hasn't been mentioned much in camp, but has experience, is a veteran, is Malik Jefferson. They picked up from the Colts. So keep an eye on him as these games progress, as he's able to show more of his opportunities, and we'll see where that kind of goes for the Cowboys. So let's just find out what happens with linebacker. But again, bear in mind, that spot is very, very thin at linebacker. So these guys have to make sure they're healthy going into these games, into these practices, and rolling into the regular season. And my last point that I want to touch on in this quick, like I said, freestyle of sorts, talking about the Cowboys, is, do the Cowboys have a kicking problem? And I think they do. I think they do. And for a lot of Cowboys fans, they might have been blindsided going into the offseason and training camp, because they picked up the kicker from Texas Tech, Garibay, and he's not looked great in practice. Even him and the other kicker from last year that they brought back, Liram, I cannot say his last name, but you guys can Google it and find out. They've both been shaky in camp. Some misses that are inside or on the cusp of about 50 yards. And that is an area of concern. You want your kickers to be consistent in the camp. When it comes to Garibay, I think, this is my personal take, is that he may have been crowned too soon, where he was kind of given the green light. People saw his kicks on social media, kind of got excited, and it was almost a foregone conclusion that he was the guy going into the season. And some were just saying he's a lock, he's the kicker. Well, he's struggling. And so I think it might be a matter of we have to temper the expectations too. And I don't know that maybe he's overthinking it too much, or he's been given too much of a vote of confidence going into camp. I'm not quite sure. But kicking is one of those spots where it's very mental. So if anything has permeated his confidence, his mindset, as you've seen with a lot of veteran guys and some young players too at kicker, once they lose that confidence, they may not get it back. So it's going to be hard to see what happens. And also when you have issues at kicker going to these games, it also compromises the rest of the roster too, because you want to see the entire roster showcase what they have. But if you're purposely trying to get a kicker on the field in games in preseason, it kind of compromises everything else. So we had to kind of see. With kicker, we'll see what happens. And we have to also understand that the coordinator there, Fossil, has a heavy weight in the personnel makeup of the roster when it comes to special teams. So if he has a guy in mind that he likes, who knows? I mean, he's got connects all over the league. Maybe they explore something different as far as bringing a guy back, or a guy that they like, maybe a Kai Forbath. As Cowboys fans will always have that name, right in the forefront center when it comes to kickers. Who knows? But I think there is a concern about kicker. They have to address that if there is an extensive problem we have going forward. So we have to see. We have to definitely see. But like I said, quick freestyle, top of the head, talking about the Cowboys. We'll see what happens later on this week as far as if they do decide to change course and bring in another receiver to kind of help the roster get along without Washington. And we'll just kind of monitor the situation. But those are my quick thoughts on the Cowboys in camp going into week 2. And again, a game right around the corner. Actually get real football coming up in about 2 days with the Hall of Fame game. So the season is coming, the season is fast approaching, and the Cowboys have got to be ready. But those are my thoughts. So let me know in the comment section if you like the video, hit a like. If you guys want to sub and see more content like this, hit that sub button for more. But once again, I'm LP Cruz. Thanks for watching. This has been LP's Open Mic Night. As always, Cowboys up. Peace.